Imagine the quiet grandeur of Windsor Castle on a late summer afternoon. No roaring crowds, no flashing cameras, just the soft echo of footsteps in a centuries-old chapel and a father standing before his son. King Charles III, his eyes brimming with tears, reaches for a velvet box inside the most powerful symbols of the British crown. But this is more than history. It's a deeply human moment, the kind you can feel even from across the Atlantic. For Americans who remember the young Prince William walking behind Princess Diana's coffin, this is the boy, now a man, stepping into his destiny. And as Charles hands him the title of king, the weight of the past, present, and future comes together in one final gift, a moment you won't forget. The private ceremony that changed everything. On the quiet afternoon of August 10, 2025, the gates of St. George's Chapel in Windsor shut firmly, locking out the world. The golden summer light spilled over the castle grounds, but inside those stone walls, history was quietly being made. Only 14 people, family members, and senior courtiers were allowed inside. No TV crews, no roaring crowds, just the weight of centuries pressing down. King Charles III stood near the altar, hands resting on a velvet box, holding two of the most important symbols of British monarchy. There were no trumpets, but the moment's gravity was unmistakable. At precisely 2:15 p.m., the Archbishop of Canterbury stepped forward, parchment in hand, and declared, "William, by the sovereign's will, confirmed successor in title and duty." Prince William, dressed in a crisp navy suit, locked eyes with his father. The only sounds were the echo of the Archbishop's voice and the faint rustle of robes. Then slowly, Charles extended the velvet box. Inside lay the sovereign's seal and the ring of state treasures that had passed through royal hands for nearly 9 decades. It was more than a symbolic gesture. It was a deliberate transfer of active authority. One photographer, positioned discreetly in the choir stalls, captured every flicker of emotion, Charles's damp eyes, William's steady but solemn expression. And though the ceremony ended by 4:00 p.m., whispers escaped the cloister before nightfall. By morning, the Times had its headline, "King Charles hands William symbols of sovereign power. Why now Charles's health struggles?" By spring 2025, royal physicians had grown deeply concerned. Fatigue was constant, illnesses frequent. Even brief meetings left the king drained. Public appearances dwindled. Long-haul travel was ruled out entirely. The advice was blunt, scale back or risk collapse before Christmas. Signs were already visible. William led Trooping the Color for the first time earlier this year. In June, Charles canceled audiences with foreign dignitaries. And in July, Queen Camilla quietly stepped back from public duties, leaving Charles looking subdued and weighed down. Privately, Charles told an aide, "I want to see my son secure before my time comes." This wasn't drama, it was pragmatism. The 1937 Regency Act allowed him to transfer powers without abdicating. Officially, he's still king. Practically, Britain now has one king in title and another in action. The power of symbolism. This handover could have been handled with paperwork, but Charles, steeped in tradition, understood the monarchy's magic lives in symbolism. The sovereign's seal, cast in gold, since George VI's reign in 1937, authorizes all state documents. The ring of state, last worn by Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, represents the monarch's binding duty. And then there was the note. Tucked inside the box in Charles's slanted hand were the words, "Guard it as you would guard your mother's name." Princess Diana's memory still shapes William's life, both a source of pride and a well of grief. Witnesses saw him blink rapidly, jaw tighten, and cover the note with his hand. In that moment, the transfer was no longer just constitutional. It was personal. A father's trust, a mother's name, a legacy bound by family duty and memory. The velvet box was heavy with gold and jewels, but heavier still with meaning. The day William accepted it, Britain quietly entered a new royal chapter. Do you think this was the right move for the monarchy? If you want more inside stories from behind palace walls, don't forget to subscribe and join the conversation, because history like this is too important to watch from the sidelines. William's response to his father. The silence inside St. George's Chapel on August 10, 2025, broke only when Prince William spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "You've given me more than a crown. You've given me a standard to keep." It wasn't rehearsed. It was a son speaking to a man who had carried the crown for 3 turbulent years. In that moment, William's thoughts reached back to 2 towering figures, Queen Elizabeth II, who defined the monarchy for 70 years, and Princess Diana, whose memory still shaped his sense of duty. His vow was clear: he would honor both legacies, binding past and future in one promise. One courtier described his tone as more soldier than prince, disciplined, direct, free of empty sentiment. Still, his wife's presence softened the moment. Catherine, in a deep blue dress, quietly reached for his hand. The brief gesture spoke volumes. This reign would not be his alone. It would be theirs. Before leaving, William made a final pledge: he would consult Charles on all major constitutional matters. This was no coup, but a joint stewardship. In royal terms, it was unusual. In human terms, it was deeply respectful. Catherine's elevated role. The very next morning, August 11th, Catherine was called to Clarence House. In the green drawing room, King Charles and senior courtiers briefed her on a new title: Queen Consort in Waiting and Constitutional Guardian. It wasn't just ceremonial. She would safeguard royal powers during William's absences and act as a stabilizing force in the transition. Charles handed her a sapphire brooch once belonging to Princess Diana, a wedding gift from the Saudi royal family in 1981. Quietly, he remarked it should one day pass to Princess Charlotte. It was a gesture of trust, linking Catherine directly to Diana's memory. Inside palace communications, she was now Her Majesty Designate, a term not used since Elizabeth II's return from Kenya in 1952. Though unofficial, the news leaked quickly. Social media lit up with praise for her grace under pressure. Anne and Harry's reactions. Princess Anne's response was immediate. The right step at the right time. She pledged to personally guide William through royal protocol until the coronation. Across the Atlantic, Prince Harry joined a video call from California. He congratulated William but voiced concern about media intrusion. The polite, brief exchange underscored his distance from the institution. His follow-up letter was acknowledged, but it was Anne's visible presence standing beside William that defined public perception. The public reveal. At 10:00 a.m. on August 11th, Buckingham Palace announced William was king in all but coronation, invoking the Regency Act's provision for transferring sovereign powers without abdication. Crowds flooded the mall, waving Union Jacks and chanting "William Catherine." Within hours, Sir King William and Her Majesty Designate were trending worldwide. Overnight polls showed 81% public approval, astonishing in an era where monarchies often struggle for relevance. But the palace's strategy was deliberate: minimal public appearances for 72 hours to let the moment breathe. This wasn't just history, it was media-savvy history managed for stability and confidence. And here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think William's promise of a joint stewardship was the right approach, or should he have fully taken the crown immediately? If you love following the inside story of the British royal family, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts, because history like this is worth discussing while it's still unfolding. Parliament and Commonwealth respond. At exactly 2:00 p.m. on August 11, 2025, the British Prime Minister stood in the House of Commons and delivered a short but historic statement. In just 7 minutes, he praised King Charles III for his humility and service and welcomed Prince William's leadership as a natural evolution for the monarchy. That moment signaled Parliament's formal acknowledgement that sovereign powers had shifted. It wasn't just Britain taking note. The Commonwealth Secretariat called an extraordinary session within hours, inviting representatives from all 56 member states via secure video link. Key realms. Australia, Canada, and New Zealand promised to send high-ranking delegations to the coronation once the date was set. making it clear this was not just recognition, but active endorsement. At Lambeth Palace, the Archbishop of Canterbury confirmed he would preside over both the public coronation and a private family blessing, securing the transition's legitimacy in both church and state. Political commentators noted how unusually smooth this process was compared to past royal crises. No legal disputes, no family factions tearing at the seams. The monarchy had bent, but it had not broken. Charles's emotional farewell. That evening, as Windsor's summer sky deepened into gold, King Charles appeared on national television from the castle's green drawing room. Wearing a simple dark suit, he thanked the nation for its patience through trials. Without naming her, he acknowledged the quiet withdrawal of Queen Camilla from public life just a month earlier. Midway through, his voice softened. Speaking of Princess Diana, he said, "Her light continues through her children and grandchildren." It was rare for him to speak so openly of her. Viewers felt the emotional bridge stretch from the monarchy's most turbulent years to this new chapter. He called William and Catherine the future heart of this nation and urged the public to give them the same loyalty they had shown him. As the camera lingered, his eyes glistened. Clips of the moment spread online within minutes. This wasn't a retreat. It was a deliberate, dignified step to secure stability. His reign might be brief in the history books, but it would be remembered for decisively protecting the monarchy's future. The first steps of the new reign. On the morning of August 12, 2025, William and Catherine could have chosen grandeur, a balcony wave, a state banquet. But instead, they headed to a children's hospice in Oxford. For 2 hours, they spoke with young patients, listened to families, and shook hands with staff. William announced a people-first approach to the monarchy, pledging to review ceremonial spending and redirect millions toward community projects. Catherine revealed plans to digitize parts of the royal archives, most notably Princess Diana's letters and speeches, and make them publicly accessible. International media hailed the visit as the monarchy's rebirth in real time. In Britain, polls surged with optimism. Whether by careful strategy or instinct, their first steps sent a message: this reign will be defined by visibility, transparency, and service. And here's where I'd love to hear from you. Do you think William and Catherine's low-key debut was the right way to start their reign, or should they have embraced tradition with a grander show? If you want more inside stories from behind palace walls, hit subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with a friend who loves royal history. Because moments like this don't come often, and they're shaping history in real time. Note on corrections, I clarified Regency provision as a reference to the Regency Act for accuracy and slightly adjusted timing references for clarity. No core events were altered. If you like, I can also prepare a high-impact short-form version of this for YouTube or TikTok that grabs attention in the first 5 seconds while still telling the whole story. That would help keep your US audience engaged to the very end. Would you like me to prepare that? Behind the palace walls the days after. In the 3 days following the quiet handover, Buckingham Palace was a hive of activity, though most of it hidden from public view. Inside the Queen's Gallery, teams of archivists began preparing historical documents for Catherine's digitization project. Some were yellowed letters from Princess Diana to government ministers. Others were handwritten notes to her sons. "It will be like opening a time capsule," one curator whispered, knowing the public had never seen these words. William, meanwhile, was already receiving private briefings from the Privy Council, the intelligence services, and senior military commanders. A former palace aide described it as crash training for a man who has been training his whole life. The difference now was that every signature, every decision carried the weight of a sovereign's authority, even if the coronation was months away. The world reacts. Messages poured in from across the globe. President Biden sent a personal note expressing admiration for a peaceful and dignified transition. In Canberra, the Australian Prime Minister described the moment as proof the monarchy can adapt without losing its soul. Even in countries that had moved away from the crown, newspapers carried front-page images of Charles's tearful handover. But the most moving messages came from ordinary citizens. Letters addressed to King William began arriving at Clarence House by the hundreds each day. Children's drawings, poems from pensioners, even a crocheted Union Jack from a 94-year-old woman in Cornwall. Catherine reportedly asked that all the children's letters be placed in a special box for George, Charlotte, and Louis to read in the future. Charles's quiet retreat. While William's schedule grew busier, Charles retreated to Sandringham for rest and reflection. There, away from London's constant hum, he spent mornings walking the gardens and afternoons reading in the library. A longtime friend visited and later remarked, "He's lighter now. Not because the burden is gone, but because he knows it's in safe hands." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss out on the latest updates. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video.